Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast Rise and Tell with Sheekha. Our guest today is Ryan McClellan. When he was 16 years old, he just realized that his mission in life is to help others. He's a life coach by profession, but he's been in marketing for over 18 years. He's in digital marketing, and as a life coach, he's helped thousands of people. Ryan is a certified life coach and he specializes in self esteem, mindset, and leadership development. With his 18 years of experience as a marketing consultant and a business owner, he has launched and led 9 businesses. And you know what? His journey started at 18 years old. And when we were talking, he even said that one of his businesses was picked up or acquired by Hollister. You don't want to go into details, but you'll know more. So check out the full video. Ryan helps people figure out the mindset that is required to become a successful leader. His experience talks for himself. He's also an author of 6 published books. He usually discusses topics on how to lead with courage, rewiring limiting beliefs, and learning to love yourself unapologetically. And not in a bad way, but as a mindset shift that can change lives. You are going to know for yourself when you listen to the entire episode. So check it out. And don't miss his last amazing tip that he had for us. All right, everybody. Today we have with us Ryan. Welcome, Ryan, to our show. How are you?
I'm doing good. As always, a little tired. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's been a busy couple days. Family's in town. My grandma is 94.
Oh, wow.
So we are, long story short, that's always interesting to deal with.
It
And
is.
just happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We'll just get started, Ryan. And my very first question to you is going to be what was your driving force for writing 6 books?
Um, Originally, I'll put it this way. Number one, all 6 books have been very well received by the 2 people who actually read them. Number two, I was, and this kind of goes into when I was 7, I was always a writer. But they say you have talents and then you have skills. Talents you're born with, skills you can get good at them, you learn, but if you don't practice them, that was me with drawing. I stopped drawing and 10 years later I can't draw, but I can always write. And
Nice.
when I was 17, basically I was just kind of going through the motions at that point. And I would write poems. I ended up writing a bunch of short stories, literally just sitting in class with a pen and a sheet of paper. And long story short, I ended up at 18. And keep in mind, this was before self-publishing really existed. It was like the dawn of self-publishing.
Right.
Realized I could put the short stories together, made it into one solid book, and it ended up on Amazon. And then I just kept going, but never marketed them, never really looked at it as a career. There's 1,000 ebooks published on Amazon a day, so
Right.
it's crazy. Spend $10 on ads, and you might get one sale. You get $1.70, and no, but I enjoy writing. It's fun. It's my passion. Really don't care if anyone's reading it or not. Maybe one day someone will read one, and then snowball effect.
Correct. Correct. Wow. Interesting, Ryan. Okay. So you're a life coach and
Yes, ma'am.
you've started a lot of businesses and you've gone through a lot. So what's your story?
Okay. Short story long, as I always like to say. I, started around the age of 14. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, OCD, and anxiety, depression, a bunch of other stuff. It's been 20 years, and 20 years later, we still don't really know what it is. But I'll put it this way: from 14 onward, I've had, it's stabilized now. I'm good now. But I always struggled with some sort of, mental health, as they call it. I don't like to refer to it as mental illness because the stigma of it. But that was kind of when I got into life coaching, the idea, because I realized I'm going to be on, if I'm being diagnosed as bipolar, I want to know how that works.
Right.
So, ended up, and fast forward, middle school was tough. That was the diagnosis. I kind of, by the time I hit high school, it was getting to a point where I was basically unable to focus, unable to concentrate. When you're on medications, SSRIs, antidepressants, and at one point an antipsychotic. Not afraid to say it.
Right.
I never thought I was psychotic. I don't know where they got that impression. My psychiatrist continually asked, "So are you still hearing voices?" And I'm like, "When did I? It's been 20 years later. Like, when did I ever say I hear voices? Like, I meant, in inner self talk. I think
Right.
they thought I actually heard voices in the back of my." But long story short, I one day just realized I was failing. I couldn't do it. I dropped out, and it was a messy month. I just spent the majority of that month laying in bed, literally with my face down in the pillow,
Right.
doing nothing. And then one day, kind of a light bulb just went off, and I realized, okay, well, I eventually returned to college. Literally 3 years ago, graduated, but I realized I can't just sit around and do nothing, and just lay here and wait for life to, as they say, if you spend your day with your face down in a pillow or in your bed, if you don't move, you don't move.
Right.
If you're in darkness, you can't find the light unless you start moving. It doesn't matter if you're in the right direction; you just had to start looking for that light. So I went online. This was MySpace, the MySpace days, and they had
Right.
HTML coding on there. So I wanted the best MySpace page ever. So learned HTML coding,
Oh.
made the best MySpace page ever. Tom was jealous, or whoever it was. And next thing you know, I ended up through MySpace. Ironically, I found clients. Started a web and graphic design business at 18. LLC did and everything,
Oh,
and
cool.
it spiraled into roughly 10 to 15 years, I'd estimate, of just everything from, like I basically have founded, managed, and operated 9 different businesses. One was sold to Hollister in 2019, which was cool. It was a
Oh,
clothing
wow.
brand.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
fun.
you. It wasn't a good deal. We didn't really make much money, but it was cool.
Yeah.
The point is, I guess at the end of the day, then I ended up returning to school. Got my BA in psychology and my master's in marketing.
Oh, nice.
Um, but it was, I guess, the moral of the story is, life coaching dawned upon me when I realized, um, if I can pick myself up and do all of that for myself, as many people say, if they I think it was a artist, a band, great singer. He said, "If I can't have me, then no one else can." In other words, pretty
Yeah.
self-explanable. And I realized, if I learned to just kind of hold my head up, maybe life wouldn't pass me by as much. And at the end of the day, if I could give to myself what I give to others, which I started doing, for a while, never did that, never took really care of myself, just took
Right.
care of everyone around me. But when you walk that darkness for such a long period of time, you find yourself climbing your way out of it, clawing, scratching at whatever gets in your way. I've fallen 1,000 times, and as they say, I don't bend, but I may bend, but I don't break.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I've fallen off the horse 1,000 times. And everyone says, just okay, well, maybe you need a bicycle instead. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm riding the horse. I really want to get on the horse. The horse wants me to ride it. I'm going to keep getting on. So more or less, life coaching dawned from that point onward. I realized I needed to give what I did for myself to others, and that's what I've been doing for 15 years now.
Wow. That's inspiring. And you brought up a great point, Ryan, because we had a guest on our show, and his name was Kiwan Amy. And that guy, he was in the Air Force, had a great job, talented.
I
He
listened to
had
that
an
one.
Yeah, he had an
It was
accident.
very good.
Yeah, and he lost his vision, and he told the exact same thing. He's like, if I am not going to help myself, I realize nobody will. And then the exact
Exactly.
same thing. Wow, that's inspiring. That is very, very cool. And I'm so glad that you're here and you're talking about it. I think that's awesome. Okay.
Well,
So, as a life coach, Ryan, how
yes,
would
ma'am.
you help someone who is all over the place and doesn't have a vision or a focus, or, like in today's days, they like to call, they don't have a niche, they don't know what to do. So, what would
Exactly.
you suggest to someone like that?
Someone who has, I would number one say that that person, I've learned one thing with 15 years of coaching. No matter, and that kind of goes to the niche topic where, people come to me for leadership coaching or mindset coaching or leading a team, executive coaching. 70% of the time, it all comes down to changing someone's mindset. And then the remaining 30% is just teaching them how to look at things through other people's perspectives. That's kind
Right.
of my formula. But someone who's all over the place, that is an indication to me that they are not. It's not a matter of I'll be honest. I'm all over the place too. It's a good thing to be all over the place, but sometimes you have to stick to one thing at a time.
Right.
If you don't have a direction, I used to do this with. That's why I had 9 companies because I would go from one,
Right.
finish
Right.
it, and then it was like, okay, if you've ever seen Shark Tank, there's Barbara, I think is the one, the one of the members, and she's, whenever someone comes in and they have like other ideas, she goes, I can't work with you. You're an inventor. You
Right.
continually,
Right.
so you don't stick with the one thing long enough, and that's kind of what I would say is, you have to, obviously, if you have 30 ideas, write them down, continue to document the thoughts as they come, because that if you have a lot of things going around your head and everything's just moving around and you're all over the place, that's a good thing. It means you're creative. It means you're thinking in terms of, at least you're not thinking. You're at least all over
Right.
the place and doing something. But you have to find the two or three things that you, I guess you could say, are the most realistic.
Right.
We often have to look at things in terms of do what you're you have to do what you're good at, not specifically what you love, because you might learn to love what you're good at if you do it the right way.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
I'll be honest, that wasn't me. That was Corey Taylor, Slipknot, big fan. He lectured at Oxford, but he was right. People go into music as an example. Someone asked him, like, I want to be a musician. He was at Oxford. I don't know why the lead singer of Slipknot was at Oxford giving a lecture, but he was, and he said those exact words, and it stuck with me because it made so much sense. He was like saying, you could be good at music, but I mean, you may love music and you may be good at it, but you need to look at what else you have. You're in college, you get the degree, get the career going, and there's a scene in Step Brothers, if you've ever seen the movie.
I haven't.
Um, I'll after this, I'll send you the 1 minute clip. Basically, long story short, the fathers, they finally he gets the stepsons to grow up. They're 40 years old, they're being like children and stuff, and don't have jobs. And finally, they get jobs, and he sees that they just seem so normal and like average, and he comes up and he just says, "Okay, listen." I, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a T Rex. I always wanted to be a dinosaur, and I would roam around the neighborhood, and I would roar and stuff like that. And and they're all looking at him like what? Like that's not a skill. And he said, but then one day my dad said, Randy, it's time to put childish things aside and do something with your life. And it's quoting from the movie, basically, he said, but that's not actually what he said. He really just said, just get a freaking job and stop being a freaking dinosaur. And
Right.
long story short, he said, and so I figured I'd go to medical school. I'd, do that, and then I'd come back to the T Rex. And then there's this part he just was like, but I lost it. And they're staring at it like, that's not a skill. Being a dinosaur is not a skill. My point is, that he says something very wise, and I'm one of those, as you can tell, I'm one of those people who like to quote in moments from movies or music or stuff like that.
Yeah.
As long as I give it credit, it's
Yeah.
okay. But he says the principle is don't lose your dinosaur. In other words, do what you're good at, get a degree, get a career going, or get some sort of income going, but don't lose the passion of whatever it is that you really do love to do. And
Right.
as an example, life coaching, that I'll be honest, life coaching isn't at the present moment pay. That's kind of I paused it for about a year. It kind of came back, and now it's like, I've been in marketing 18 years. That's my main job.
Oh, wow.
But I hate marketing. It's just lying. I realized a while back, my whole job is just tricking people. So
Right.
it's not like
Right.
I get it. I know how to do it. I'm very good at it, but I don't. It doesn't fulfill me. Life coaching does, but at the same time, I had to realize I'm very good at that, and
Right.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. Wow, that is fun. I mean, yeah, it is. And when you said, I like to go, I would want to go back to the point where you said, when you've coached a lot of people in the corporate world, it's
yeah.
70% mindset and 30% just making them look from a different perspective. So
And to
let's
other
say,
people's perspectives too. Yeah, that's
yeah.
the other thing.
So how do you go about doing that? When did that thought come to your mind? Like, okay, this is what I need to tell people. This is how I want to coach them. Like, okay, change your mindset. When was that light bulb moment?
That would have been, I would say the best estimate would be that was around the time that I started one of the last company I started was if I say the name, I have a feeling that I will get sued just based on knowing how my partner was at the time. Long story short, it didn't end well. Equity shares
Right.
stuff, and just it was long story short is that was when I realized that as I was seeing people coming to me, I had never settled on niche, whatever.
Right, right.
It's both ways, and tomato, tomato, as they
Yeah.
say. But I realized whatever someone came to me for, if it was coaching a team, teaching someone to be more productive, holding someone accountable, it kind of just revealed to me that there was no one singular moment. It was just I kind of started realizing that when people were coming in,
Right.
and this is one thing that I think, not to sound arrogant, just it's just a kind of a point. I guess what makes me different is I look at it as I'm not a therapist. I'm not licensed to diagnose. I have to make sure when I sign a client up, they have to sign a document that literally says I am not a therapist, and if
Right.
I tell you to do something and if you jump off a cliff because I told you
Mhm.
that to motivate you and that it was on your bucket list. If you don't land in the water and you end up splat, you can't, your family can't sue me. I'm very
Right.
detailed about
Right.
that, but it was no one light bulb moment. It was just, I realized that basically every time it came down to the idea of not looking at it as okay, well, I would always go in with the idea of let's go from where are you now and where do you want to be?
Right.
Point A to point B. And over time, I started realizing the more questions you ask, the deeper they get. And that's one thing
Mm.
that a lot of coaches don't do. And that's why I consider myself more of a generalist than a lot of people say, that's the worst way to look at it. And I think, no, it's not because it's a matter of just asking questions, just as a therapist would in that sense. And I found out that majority of the time, half of it, like I said, 70% of the time, it comes down to just that person may have low self esteem. They
Right.
may have, I'll find someone who comes in. I had a manager of a Fortune 1000 company, did a Zoom call and came, crass individual, very business is business, type A extrovert, just like get to the point. I need my team to communicate better and be more productive. How do I do that? And I started digging it. And within about 15 minutes, and I guess this was kind of the light bulb moment, he was in tears. And somehow we went from how to get his team to be more productive, to what happened with you and your father when you were 5.
Oh, wow.
And long story short, that is when I realized, you know what? At the end of the day, if you want to get from point A to point B, or to solve any given situation, whether it's productivity or learning to be more assertive, at the end of the day, it always comes down to how you think about the world around you, and how you perceive the world
Yeah.
around you. And also, that's the other thing I focus on, like I said, is looking at things through other people's perspectives. A lot of people come off as rude, or maybe crass, but there's a saying, I know it wasn't Stephen King. It was Stephen King paraphrased it from someone, but it was a great quote. The pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. And my interpretation of that is sometimes people might mean well, but if they come off a certain way,
Yeah.
it looks like they're trying to, they're not doing it the right way. But I've learned over time that you have to kind of look at it through their perspective. The person yelling at the cashier for giving them the wrong change, I don't look at it as that person's, just being an a-hole. I'm looking at it as, I wonder what happened this morning or yesterday, what's going on in their lives, because, I believe humankind is good. I believe we all have good in us. And when people react a certain way, whether it's negatively or positively, there's always a reason behind it. I don't think anyone's just purposefully uh, crass or rude. I believe that, but yeah, that was kind of it.
Oh, wow. That gave me so much clarity. And I can now picture you and that manager sitting across, and then that guy just
It was a weird,
going.
it was a weird moment in my career. Ironically, I did my first real life coaching session was, I was in math class, algebra class, when I was 16. I didn't know it was a live coaching session, but my math teacher was trying to teach. I always hated math; was always bad at it. And my math teacher, I was sitting there and, trying to understand why I was honestly just going like, why are you a math teacher? Like, why, I understand, like, I didn't mean it rudely, just at that age, you're kind of like, I was kind of just joking around, like, what got you into math? And he said, well, math is, there's always a clear cut answer. There's always
Yeah.
everything has a solution. There's only one right answer. And I kind of looked at him and just said, well, what makes you require, what's going on, or what happened, or why do you need that kind of consistency?
Right.
And
Right.
he ended up another crier. I made my math teacher cry because he started talking about how he had just gotten through a bad divorce, and originally he was actually, before teaching math, he was a professional musician, making actual money off of it. Not famous, but he was not just like playing gigs. He was like he was doing stuff. And then the divorce set that off, and long story short, he was just in tears. And yeah, the manager in tears. It was, I don't like to say it was good, but it was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And from that point onward, long story short, he and from last time I spoke with him 6 months ago, he was doing. The team had increased in productivity. We did touch upon those issues. Just I had to kind of break him down to figure out who he is as a person on the inside, and that from there I can go, okay, well, I understand that's where you are, and that's who you are as a person on the inside, and that's how you think. Okay, now let's working on that. And their ROI, I think the productivity increased by 200% or something like that.
Oh, wow. That's insane. Wow. That is so cool. Oh my God. That is different. So what happened here? I think
that is different.
that's very different.
I love
Like
it.
200% productivity. Wow. I manage a team of 7 people, and I know that it's difficult to A, have someone follow the exact same thing, because everyone's working style is different. And B, when you give them certain expectations like that, okay, I need X amount by X date, that's when that little rebel comes out from them. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's like, yeah. So I'm like, 200%. That is, yeah, haven't heard, but okay, that is so cool. Now I have. But I'm thinking, listening to all these instances, Ryan, I think you as a life coach are awesome at building trust. And I think that's what makes people like these who are working for Fortune 1000 companies or whoever it is, or even your math teacher come to you and even share such things. Because I've noticed that as a person, unless you really trust the other guy or
Exactly.
whichever person is across you, you are not going to open up as an adult, or like fully grown
Exactly.
adult at least. Kids, yes. Friends, maybe. But yeah, if it's a stranger and if you mean business, then I think you did a great job at building trust with these people, and
Thank
which
you,
is
man.
why you've gotten 200% productivity.
I learned a while back that at the end of the day, I'm on LinkedIn a lot,
Yeah.
and I get a lot of messages where it's just they'll connect, they'll request a connection.
Yeah.
I'll click accept, just because I don't feel like LinkedIn is the only platform, or it used to be my favorite platform. Now it's kind of getting stale. But the point is, it'll be like literally within the first instance, the first touch point that they reach. Oh, hey Ryan, I noticed you're a life coach, so I do so and so services. I do web design, graphic design. They go straight into the sale, and I'm
Right.
like, okay, thinking to myself. And I started responding back to them, kind of looking at it as, okay, well, maybe I could help you out here. Your script isn't effective, but I could teach you how to do this the right way. And the point is, um, when you provide someone with value, and when you don't try to sell them something, or don't try to, you literally put yourself in the position of looking at them as a human. Business is business. I've always hated that saying, because we're all humans. We all have transference. We all have an inevitable impact on one another. And business is business. I get it, but we have to realize that we have that. Our business is business, does affect real lives.
Right.
But long story short, I kind of started realizing that. Um, the best way to do anything in life, whether it's building trust or selling something, or if you do it right, if you provide value, talk to someone, introduce yourself, and not even talk business with them, just talk about their lives.
Yeah.
When the time comes and they need what you're offering, they'll come back to you if you provide them with the value up front. You won't have to sell anything, and that's the big mistake a lot of people make, is they try to sell what they're doing, and sometimes they'll do the warm approach, and they read an article or heard a podcast or something about, okay, we'll warm up, and then finally at the end, call to action, and all that stuff, and at the end of the day, it's kind of just like, half the time I'm like, so all that time and energy I just wasted talking about stuff, my business, and you asking questions, was all to just kind of warm me up to buy a service.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I believe that's kind of the case in that sense, even with life coaching in general. Just, if you do things right, people really won't be sure you've done anything at all. They'll remember you. They'll come back to you and they'll say, okay, well, I remember he was, oh, that's who I'll go to when I have this issue. And I'd say 80% of the time, I never even have to ask for the sale. It's just, they may come to me or I reach out to them, but half the time I never talk about my work. I really don't. I talk about myself, where I ask about how they're doing. Some people are a little weirded out by it because they're not used to that happening,
Right.
especially on like LinkedIn or networking events where everyone's trying to sell something, and after a while you start getting very used to realizing that if you do need to do a hard sell, you have to word it a certain way. You can't be
Yeah.
so crass about it.
Yeah.
You kind of got to look at it in terms of, I can understand that's, you have to build the trust, like you said, you have to build that relationship with someone before and that also goes two ways, because you might not want to work with the person, even if they buy the service, on the first
Yeah.
conversation. You want to know who you're working with. You have to be very selective with people these days, because last thing you want to do is waste time and energy on someone who's going to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So it's good to get to know them, but yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now, most of our viewers and listeners, Ryan, are in that age group where they might be leaders for a certain amount of time or are being promoted to take on additional responsibilities. And leadership is something that they're new to. So, with your experience and all the strategies and workshops that you've done, what would you say are the top two things that young workforce or people who are younger should keep in mind when taking on these additional responsibilities as a leader, or if they're already a leader and are struggling with that position?
Number one, realize that, and I realized this a while back. People, majority of the time, and there's been research on this. There have been studies. People will happily take a cut in a paycheck if it means that they feel like their input is welcome. I this was before like coaching, but I was at an earlier age. I was I went. I don't know. It was a sales position. I didn't do it, but I just remember going in and they basically had a sign on the. In other words, they involved everyone in the meeting rooms, the meeting boards. All the employees had a say, and that kind of built that report, and it kind of made people feel, people would rather take a pay cut and make less money if they feel they belong where they are. So, in other words, I guess the point is have kind of listen to your employees. Some of them may have really good ideas.
Yeah.
And number two, always make sure that you realize that, as an example, I always had a theory. This never actually happened, but what if someone is consistently showing up to work 10 minutes late?
Right.
If some people will look at leadership in that sense of, okay, well, this person's just, trying to slack off, or they're getting here late every day for no reason, so I'm just going to fire them. But if you look at the backstory, and this was just kind of a theory, what if that person, maybe they are going through a major life transition? Maybe they had to drop their kids off at school, which wasn't unexpected. It's out of their way, and you could fire them. But if you ask, why are you 10 minutes late, rather than just jumping to a conclusion, and they explain that to you. If they say, I'm just slacking off, I'm just testing you, and I just don't like, I want to be here at 9:10, even though you say 9, then okay, then fire them. Yeah. But half the time there's a reason behind it. And, in other words, realize that your employees and, just the people around you that are involved, clients, the board above you, your seniors, and, make sure that you look at them as, it's business. You have to assign your tasks, you have to be in charge, and you have to be a leader. But at the end of the day, it's not a matter of being that boss that you want to have a beer with. I've never really agreed with that. I get it. I get the point people get with that, but that kind of leads to you. In the end, you get drunk, and nothing ever happens. Nothing good ever happens when you're drunk.
100%. Yeah.
Learn that the hard way. But point is, know the employees. Be involved. Have an open door policy. If they have input, if they have an idea, welcome it. I even had a while back a client. I told them, okay, well, they wanted, once again, the productivity and leadership, and they were trying to figure out, how do I get everyone, because they were getting a lot of people quitting, and they kept saying, okay, we'll give you more money if you stay, because these were high performers, salesmen who were earning the top commission were leaving just because, and they didn't know why. And I finally said, well, have you ever really involved them in the business strategy? Because they're, you may be on your end managing everything, but they're the one talking to the leads, closing the deals. They know the business probably better than you do. So have an open door policy. Literally, I literally told them, put on your door, or your office door, or if you have he had a meeting room where I guess the executives would meet. I said, have a open door policy where employees could come in, not interrupt and not like intervene and try to be disruptive, but just You don't know. They might have good ideas. You never know.
Yeah.
And you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so I would say those are the two things. One, realize that every employee has a backstory, and they need to be looked at as people once again, bringing back to light. This is actual research. People would happily take a pay cut if they feel they have a purpose or a say in the business or are respected in that sense. Two, kind of keep an open door policy and realize that your employees may know more about the business than you do, whether you like to believe it or not, because they're on the front line selling whatever you're doing, whatever the position may be, and just realize that everybody has their story, and we are all human. And at the end of the day, business is definitely business. I agree, but we have to learn to modify our behaviors a little bit and realize that it's okay to if someone's not closing leads and they were like the top performer, it's perfectly okay to sit down and say what's going on in your life. Is there something happening? And I have 10 stories off the top of my head where I could explain various scenarios where that happened and what resulted from it. But it's always good to know.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because when I initially joined, I realized that everybody has imposter syndrome. And in order to get over that, when you hear a compliment from a leader, especially if they're super busy, but they still made time to notice what you did and called you out, but in a very good way, like appreciating all the work you did, that boosted your confidence so much. And I noted that when I got into a leadership position, I decided everyone asks me, like, who do you want to be? I'm like, I know who I don't want to be like, because I've had managers and leaders. I know manager is a bad word, but I've had leaders who've not given a damn about what I did, how I did, and how it impacted the entire work. But on the other hand, I had these amazing leaders who stood by me and they were like, oh, wow, we really appreciate everything you did. And that's really great. And they didn't say it just for the sake of saying. So I made a note of it. And I do that with all my team members till date. And I see their response too. The minute you appreciate their work, everybody's face lights up, no matter how sad or how down they are, and irrespective of their mood. And to your second point, yeah, I completely agree. First thing is to ask what's going on in their life because you're noticing these things. We had a situation at work the last quarter and it wasn't fun. So I had to be that person to go ask and figure out what's going on. And sometimes the issues are so complex that you feel actually grateful that you are not in that position. And that makes you think, like going back to your point of, shifting, viewing it from a different perspective, that forces you to see things from a different perspective. Like, what would you do if you had a sick child? Or what would you do if you were going through that? So I agree 100%. And those are some excellent points, Ryan. Thank you so much for those wonderful tips.
Love it.
Yeah. Before we end the session, Ryan, is there any last tip or suggestion that you want to give to our listeners or viewers?
I would say, as I say, lead by example. That is really the best tip you could give, because if you lead the right way, if you do things right, if you lead a team, if you're managing, whether it's one employee or 1,000, or if you're an entrepreneur or you're solopreneur or whatever your situation is, definitely lead by example and just keep an open mind. Realize that leadership is not being in a leadership position is not an excuse to be have that self entitlement. Know that your title might, you are in charge, or you might be in a position where you're you kind of have that free reign over the employees, and a lot of people get very drunk on power. But my I guess you could say is just lead by example. Realize that if you can look at, like we discussed, if you could look at things through their perspective and realize that everybody there wants, no one goes to work wanting to hate their job.
Yeah.
They want to be in an environment where they feel like they could be trusted and at the end of the day listened to. So I would say just lead by example, keep the door open, and you never know where things go. And worst case scenario is someone gives you bad advice, and you just jot it in the back of your head, but don't ever tell them that's bad advice. Just say, "Thank you, I will consider that," and then don't do it if it's bad advice. But you'd be surprised how often, how quickly a company can scale just by asking, in other words, what do you think? We should be doing. We're not closing those leads, so what do you think?
Yeah.
Even if you know the answer to that question, just asking, like you said, everyone kind of lights up, and we all have that. Uh, we all, it's anthropology. We're all, at the end of the day, the human being is not as complex as we think. We really aren't. At recent studies, we have about an 8-second attention span. Goldfish have a 12-second attention span. So humans are not really as, we're not as advanced as we think we are. But at the end of the day, we are all human, and we all need to be, we all want recognition. It's just part of life. So reward your employees with praise, listen to them, and lead by example. And remember that if someone's not doing their work correctly, see if there's something going on, or if they're just slacking off. If they're slacking off, do what you need to do, but realize that sometimes people just need to be listened to, and their input might help you more than you think.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful advice. And thank you so much, Ryan, for being on our show. It was an absolute pleasure. And thank you again for taking time out from your busy schedule for us.
Thank you. It's not too busy. But I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
I hope you had an awesome time listening to Ryan's beliefs and his thought process on leadership and his experiences as a life coach. I know I enjoyed it. I learned a thing or two as a leader myself. I hope you get more such inspiration from our videos. And if you haven't already checked out the other episodes, go check it out right now. As always, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself. This is your host, Sheekha Singh, signing off. Bye.